Welcome to the long-awaited episode 3 of Coffee with Kelsey. If you haven't listened to episode 1 and 2 yet, be sure to go back and listen to those first before continuing today with episode 3. Moving to New York was something that I always saw myself doing. It was a place that I always wanted to be. I remember vividly the first time that I visited New York City, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. It was a mecca of art and theater and dancing and everything that I loved and wanted to be a part. And I always saw myself there. I think the first time that I went to New York, I was probably about 13 years old, and immediately fell in love with everything that the city had to offer. The realization that it was actually happening was so incredible and just a dream come true, honestly. And I have to say, there were quite a few naysayers. Don't go there, don't do this, you're going to ruin your career before it even starts, blah, 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 blah. And I gotta tell you, honestly, it was the best thing that I possibly could have done for my career. I knew that I knew that I needed to be there. We knew we needed to be there to go. I kind of contemplated and thought about if I should share this on the podcast, and I think I'll share a piece of it, but there was quite a lot of drama in Pittsburgh, and I personally, but we both did, we received a lot of threats about teaching and keeping our amateur status, and people were going to, report us for teaching and still keeping our amateur status, but it was absolutely absurd and ridiculous. We knew plenty of amateur dancers who were teaching full-time and had no problem, but there were certain people who were very upset that we were doing this and threatened us many times with reporting us to the certain councils and all of this to have our amateur status revoked. So it made it very, very difficult for us to work and teach in Pittsburgh. And we knew that in order to dance, and in order to dance in at the caliber and where we wanted to dance, we had to teach. There was no way that we were going to be able to make enough money to do that working some other job. It is absolutely impossible to do. It does not exist. And especially when you are funding your own dance career, when you are funding your own dance education, like we were, nobody was paying for us. That was something that we had to take into serious consideration. We need to be able to openly work. It's really important to note that the distinction between amateur competitors and professional competitors is most often age and maturity level. So a lot of the times in the competitive ballroom worlds, the amateur competitors are fully working professionals in the field. That's just what division they compete in at this time, representing whatever country they're dancing for. So, and the rules have changed. I think they started to change back in about 2017 or so about the rules for teaching for competitors and all of this. But, even at that time when we were still dancing amateur, that all of those dancers who we were competing against too, they were all openly working full time. This was not a secret, but, sometimes there can be, a little bit of, we'll say, maybe jealousy or maybe kind of a power hold that people might want to have. And this at that time was causing a lot of tension for sure. Since finding that apartment and moving to New York, we had about a month, maybe a little over a month before we were going to move there. So we decided, we're going to make as much money as possible. We had already been putting money away for the move, but actually most of what we made was going directly into traveling and taking lessons and all of the expenses. So we needed to really hustle. So I was taking a lot of odd jobs, anything that I could get money to stash away so I would have at least something to start with. The car is packed and we're driving up to New York City, this time to move in to an apartment. So this was an exciting time. It was a pivotal moment that I had been dreaming about for a long time, for most of my life. And I knew it was going to be a pivotal moment moving forward. The excitement was absolutely palpable. I can't even describe the feeling and the amount of excitement, and it's just not something that I can even explain. I knew something was going to change, something big, and I knew that this was the moment that everything was going to start coming into the vision that I had seen in my head and that I knew I wanted and needed to have. Our first apartment was in South Brooklyn, and actually it took about 2 hours to get to the city by train. But honestly, we did not care. I didn't care. I could care less. It took 2 hours on a train because I was in New York, and it was much better than driving 7 hours to the city from Pittsburgh. So I could care less. I will sit on a train. The first few weeks up in New York, we really spent as much time as possible settling into our new training schedule with our coaches so we could make everything as productive as possible, and also to really get together the best plan of attack that we could moving forward. So at first we weren't teaching at all, actually. At first, as we started to kind of get into our training schedule after the first few weeks, we started to teach a little bit. And then also I took another job at a restaurant on the West Side as a hostess, just to get a little bit extra money flowing in, just so we would have kind of not take away from our cushion as much as we could, because we saved some money, but it wasn't a lot. We still needed some to come in. So that was really what we focused on at first. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This was definitely not a butterflies and rainbows, everything is perfect situation. There were the first few weeks where we felt, very comfortable, just excited to be there. But the realization of living in New York and how much money we needed to facilitate our very intense training schedule, as well as to live there, set in very, very quickly. Let me tell you, quickly does not even describe it, honestly. Our saving, we were keeping up and we were doing all right, but we knew that we needed to really pump it up, and we knew that it was, that was going to go like water, like very, very quickly. We were officially in New York full time in July. So we were keeping a very, very intense schedule, trying to train and do everything as much as possible. But let me tell you, by October, it really started to wear on us, and especially both of us, but especially me, I think, because our savings was done. it was gone. I was still working part-time at that restaurant, also teaching, and Igor was also teaching. And, we were at the studio one day and practicing, and probably because we were both exhausted, we were practicing. I was coming out of a trick. out of a turn and hit my own foot. Now, this resulted in my foot swelling up like a balloon. Oh my gosh, it was absolutely horrible. And I actually ended up with a broken foot. Now, I was in denial. I didn't want anyone to touch it, anyone to look at it. I tried even to get up and dance on it again, actually, me being my stubborn self. And obviously that was not something that I was able to do. What I thought was just going to be taking a few days off to let my foot settle down and depuff was very, very obviously not going to be enough. I needed to take, my foot was broken. I needed to take some serious time off. And to tell you that I was in denial was an understatement, a huge understatement. So I ended up actually losing that restaurant job in the city, and because I wasn't able to go there. I was not able to even walk on my foot, to walk on the train, to go through the city, any of this. I wasn't able to do it. I had to stay off of it. And in New York, there are so many people who want to do the same thing, who are vying for the same jobs. It doesn't matter if it's a restaurant or in an office or what it is. There is always someone there who wants to step in and do it. So that's what happened. I wasn't able to get there. Somebody else was hired and was given that position. And also, there was another thing brewing in the ocean that, quite honestly, was really freaking me out. Now, there was a weather system down south that was becoming an absolute monster. Now, keep in mind, we were living in South Brooklyn, about a block away from the ocean, in a first floor apartment. Now, for those of you who know apartments in New York, first floor literally means basement apartment. We were in that first floor, right on the ground apartment, very, very close to the ocean. So I was watching this storm system come up the coast and become bigger and bigger and bigger, and then hook right towards New York and New Jersey. This storm system was none other than the massive, atrocious monster Hurricane Sandy. And she was barreling straight for us. I was shocked how lightly everyone took the size of this storm. It was so massive. I was watching it for about a week. And when I saw it come and hook straight towards us, like right into us, I'm like, we have to get out of here. We have to leave. There were not even evacuations sent out for New Jersey or New York, anyone at this point. That day, actually, New Jersey called for evacuations. And then I said, you know what? We're putting ourselves in the car and we're leaving. We're getting out of here right now. So that's what we did. We took what we could. We took very little. Honestly, we left most of our things in our apartment. We took ourselves and a few things, a few pieces of clothing, got in the car and drove to Pittsburgh to see my family. And while we were driving to Pittsburgh, they called an evacuation of New York. Now, we knew this was going to happen. It was inevitable. It was so close to us. Let's leave it there for today, and we'll pick up where we left off next time. Thank you so much for joining me today for Coffee with Kelsey. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you know when the next episode is released. Until next time.